Very different weather conditions for race 2 at the Red Bull Ring. Extreme wet weather for what was a very tricky qualifying session that saw several cars in the gravel trap and off the road. But the driver that mastered the conditions early on was Maro Engel, and it was he that would start the race from pole position for the first time in his DTM career. Nick Cassidy qualified third but would start second. Maxi Götz had qualified second but would start with a 3-place grid penalty after track limits offences in race 1, and Sheldon van der Linde a 9-place grid penalty put him back 15th on the grid, the championship leader. So Maro Engel leading under pressure though early on from Nick Cassidy as they came up towards turn 3, the first time in the race. Full wet conditions but with the rain due to stop as the race wore on. Into turn 1 they went, struggling for grip. Felipe Fraga up the inside, but then around the outside, off the road and onto the extremely slippy escape road went Sheldon van der Linde, and into a spin for the championship leader on the very first lap of the race. And onboard showing that as soon as he went wide in the BMW, there was just no grip. As soon as he touched the throttle, around he went, and right to the back of the field. Now with an uphill battle to try and score any championship points. So as the drivers got used to the wet weather conditions, they battled their way through poor visibility. Somebody that had made a really good start though was Thomas Preining, the entertainer from race 1 in the Porsche. He got alongside Arjun Maini, and Arjun with a great recovery to avoid going into a spin. Terrific reactions from the Indian driver to keep the Mercedes just about on the road. Preining though was carving his way through the field, absolutely revelling in the conditions at his home circuit, and was easily the fastest man on the track at this stage of the race, drawing his way through and past Maxi Götz as his next victim fell by the wayside. Preining with his eyes on a possible race win. Felipe Fraga and Philipp Eng enjoyed a good battle as they battled for the podium positions in the early phases of the race. Felipe Fraga though running out a little bit wide, 2 wheels through the gravel trap, and in trouble, the Ferrari tumbling down the order as he struggled to get back onto the track and find some grip. He stayed in the race though and tucked in just in front of David Schumacher and behind Maxi Götz, and a couple of corners later he was onto the tail of the reigning champion, found a gap up the inside on the run into turn 1, and the Brazilian gained one of those places back with a good move on the way into the first corner. But it wouldn't last long because Felipe Fraga then arrived back at turn 3, understeered just as Sheldon van der Linde had done over the curbs, and he too went into a spin, pirouetting around over the clip of grass and back on the track, but losing a handful of places and loads of acceleration. Maro Engel, meanwhile, was commanding at the head of the field and had built a 5-second advantage, but Preining was continuing to charge his way through the field in the Porsche and drew alongside quickly Philipp Eng. On the curbs he went and through past the fellow Austrian to gain yet another place. Lukas Stolz had been the first to come in and change tyres. He'd stuck with the wet tyres and he rejoined. Nick Cassidy had also pitted fairly early in the Ferrari. At this stage of the race, the track was starting to dry, but only very, very slowly indeed. Lukas Stolz pitting early. Others would stay out as late as they could in the hope that they could switch to dry tyres at the end of the race. And then Thomas Preining, having been 5 seconds behind, a lap and a half later, got himself ahead of Maro Engel and into the lead of the race. Engel really starting to struggle with tyres that were beginning to overheat. Replay on board with Thomas Preining, the move that got him the lead of the race. Not long later, Maro Engel then came under fire from Arjun Maini. Maini with far more grip at this stage. Maro Engel struggling but trying to push it as late as he could before he came in for his mandatory stop. Maini down the inside, and suddenly Maro Engel back down to 3rd place. Tommy Preining came in for tyres towards the end of the stint. He went for wet tyres. Lukas Stolz on now very worn wet tyres was right behind him though. This the battle for the virtual race lead of the 2 leading pit stoppers. Preining crucially getting out ahead. Maro Engel, having struggled with the tyres, was one of those that gambled for slick tyres. Lucas Auer had done exactly the same. It would be a huge gamble given how wet it was still at some parts of the circuit, and he came out right in the middle of a group, hoping that the track would dry enough that he could get those places back in the closing stages. Nick Cassidy was another one struggling with his tyres now, the wet tyres that he'd had on since early on. Engel then just behind with contact on Laurens Vanthoor as Vanthoor left the door open on the way into turn 3. As the race wore on into the final few minutes, Maro Engel started to come good on the slick tyres, just driving around the outside of René Rast, who of the top 4 championship contenders was hoping to score some points here with, at this stage, Bortolotti and van der Linde both out of the top 10. Dennis Olsen was powerless to stop Maro Engel coming around the outside of him just a little while later at turn 3. And Engel back now into 4th place. Next target, Philipp Eng, who was also on the wet tyre in the BMW. He quickly reeled him in, and with just a couple of minutes to go in the race, this move saw Maro Engel move himself back into a podium-paying position, despite a brave effort from Philipp Eng. So, into 3rd place, but a long way down on the race leader, Thomas Preining, who'd gone away now from Lukas Stolz. And here he came through to pick up what would be his 2nd win in DTM.
This is Preining time. Yeah, mate. Well done. Thank you.
The end of a phenomenal weekend for Thomas Preining. His 2nd win in DTM, his 4th visit to the podium in what's his 1st season of the year. And there with his Walter Lechner tribute helmet, a very happy Austrian, projecting himself now suddenly up to 4th place in the championship table with just 1 weekend to go. So Thomas Preining, Lukas Stolz and Maro Engel, the top 3 at the end of a dramatic race 2 at the Red Bull Ring. There then, confirmation of the results. Arjun Maini with his best result of the season coming home in 4th place, with Philipp Eng and Lukas Auer 5th and 6th. Auer, the driver in terms of the front runners in the championship that managed to score the most points. Götz Müller, Bortolotti, who came through late on, and Olsen, the other drivers, to finish in the top 10 and in the points. Just 1 weekend then to go in DTM 2022, and the championship absolutely wide open as we look forward to what promises to be a stunning weekend at Hockenheim.